Resin is one of those crafts where the right tool doesn't just make things easier, it changes what's actually possible. Some of the tools on this list eliminate problems you've probably accepted as part of working with resin. Others open techniques you couldn't do without them. 35 tools, every one specific to resin work, every one worth your attention. Number 1, pressure pot. California Air Tools 2-gallon. A pressure pot, a sealed chamber that holds freshly poured resin molds under compressed air pressure during the cure cycle, forces air bubbles to compress below the threshold of visibility rather than rising to the surface and creating voids in the finished piece. The California Air Tools 2-gallon pot is the most widely used entry-level version in the resin art community, typically paired with a small pancake air compressor. Operating at 40 to 50 psi, bubbles present in the mixed resin become invisible in the cured piece. This is the single tool most frequently cited by professional resin artists as the upgrade that changed the quality of their work more than anything else. Cost $80 to $120 for the pot. Number 2, UV nail lamp, 48 watts for small UV resin pieces. A 48 watts UV nail lamp, the type widely used in nail salons, cures small UV resin pieces in 60 to 90 seconds rather than requiring direct sunlight, which varies in intensity, is unavailable at night, and cannot be controlled for consistency. The 48 watts power rating matters. Lower wattage lamps under 24 watts may not fully cure thicker sections of UV resin, even with extended exposure time. UV resin cured incompletely remains tacky on the surface and soft in its interior, even when appearing set. Cost $15 to $30. Having a consistent, controllable UV cure source is specifically what makes UV resin viable as a production medium rather than an occasionally usable novelty. Number 3, silicone work mat, thick, 400-degree Fahrenheit rated. A thick silicone work mat, 3 to 5 millimeters, rated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, is the non-negotiable resin workspace surface because cured epoxy peels cleanly from silicone without adhesive or damage, uncured resin doesn't bond to it, and heat gun use at close range doesn't melt or deform it. Cost $12 to $22. This is the surface that makes resin work possible on a permanent workbench without ruining the surface beneath, and it's also what allows overflow resin to be peeled off cleanly rather than becoming a permanent layer on your workspace. Number 4, digital kitchen scale, 0.1 gram precision, craft dedicated. For 2-part epoxy resin, precise ratio measurement by weight is the most reliable mixing method because volume measurement introduces errors from air pockets and meniscus effects in measuring cups. A kitchen scale dedicated to resin use never returned to food use after contact with uncured resin, with 0.1 gram precision covers the measurement requirements of most casting resins. Cost $12 to $20. Off-ratio mixing is the single most common cause of permanently uncured, sticky resin, regardless of wait time, and a precise scale is the prevention tool. Always weigh Part A, then weigh Part B separately to the calculated ratio weight specified by your resin manufacturer. Number 5, heat gun, Wagner HT400 craft specific. A heat gun specifically designed for craft use, operating at lower maximum temperatures and with a narrower airflow nozzle than industrial heat guns, removes surface bubbles from freshly poured epoxy resin by momentarily reducing the resin's surface viscosity, allowing bubbles to pop and release without blowing the resin out of the mold or scorching it. The Wagner HT400 is a widely used craft-specific model. Cost $25 to $35. Pass the heat gun over the surface in slow, even sweeps rather than holding it stationary. A stationary heat gun application can overheat one section and accelerate the exothermic reaction, causing yellowing or cracking in thick pores. Number 6, silicone stir sticks, reusable, multiple sizes. Silicone stir sticks in multiple diameters, narrow for small UV resin batches, wide for large epoxy pours, are reusable indefinitely because cured resin peels away from silicone cleanly between uses. Wooden craft sticks introduce microbubbles through their wood fiber surface and cannot be cleaned for reuse. Plastic stir sticks from disposable mixing cups accumulate resin in their surface scratches and eventually contaminate subsequent mixes. Cost $5 to $12 for a set. The specific advantage of the silicone material over alternatives is total, and the reusability makes them economically superior over time, regardless of the slightly higher upfront cost. Number 7. Graduated mixing cups, clear PP plastic, calibrated. Clear polypropylene plastic with calibrated volume markings on the side, specifically in the 1 ounce, 2 ounce, and 4 ounce sizes for different pour volumes, are the measurement and mixing vessel standard for epoxy resin. PP, or polypropylene, is the specific material that resists bonding with most epoxy formulations, allowing the cup to be used and the cured residue peeled out cleanly after cure. Cost $6 to $12 for a 50-pack. Avoid using foam or styrofoam cups, which react chemically with certain resin solvents, or wax-lined cups that can contaminate the resin mix with wax residue that causes surface defects. Number 8. Torch lighter, butane microtorch, resin surface. A small butane microtorch held 6 to 8 inches above the resin surface and moved in a continuous sweeping motion pops surface bubbles in freshly poured epoxy resin more effectively than a heat gun for large flat pours like coasters and serving trays, because the flame's radiant heat reaches the surface without the directional airflow that can disturb a carefully arranged pour. The torch is held further from the surface than instinct suggests. The radiant heat at 6 to 8 inches is what does the work. Moving closer risks scorching. Cost $15 to $28. Use in a well-ventilated area and never use butane near other flammable materials. Number 9. Resin pigment pastes, opaque, high concentration. High concentration opaque pigment pastes, specifically formulated for resin compatibility and available from resin art suppliers, produce fully opaque, deeply saturated colors in resin at very low addition rates, 0.5% to 2% by weight of the total resin volume. Craft acrylic paint used as a resin pigment introduces water content that interferes with cure chemistry and requires much higher addition rates to achieve opacity, which can affect the resin's structural integrity. Pigment pastes from specialist suppliers like Pigmently, HDTZFX, and similar resin-specific brands produce cleaner, more reliable results. Cost $8 to $15 per jar. A spatula tip, approximately 0.1 gram, is sufficient to color a 2-ounce resin batch to full metallic saturation. Number 10. Mica powder, cosmetic grade, fine grind. Cosmetic grade mica powder, the same grade used in eyeshadow and highlighter cosmetics, produces the metallic, pearlescent, and color-shifting effects in resin that are among the most visually distinctive results available in this medium. The cosmetic grade designation ensures particle size consistency and surface treatment quality that produce smooth, even metallic dispersion through the resin. Art-grade mica from non-cosmetic suppliers can have inconsistent particle sizes that settle unevenly in resin during cure. Cost $6 to $14 per jar. A spatula tip, approximately 0.1 gram, is sufficient to color a 2-ounce resin batch to full metallic saturation. Number 11. Glitter, fine polyester resin-compatible glitter. Polyester craft glitter, as opposed to PET or aluminum-based glitters, is the glitter format most compatible with resin because it is chemically inert with epoxy chemistry, doesn't bleed color into the resin matrix over time, and maintains its reflective coating in the alkaline cure environment. Chunky glitter in resin settles and sinks during cure. Fine glitter suspends more evenly through the pour. Cost $3 to $8 per jar. Always test a new glitter in a small sample batch before using in a production piece. Some glitters from non-craft suppliers use coatings that react with epoxy and produce color bleeding or surface clouding. Number 12. alcohol ink, Ranger alcohol ink range. Ranger alcohol inks, solvent based, highly pigmented inks with a very low viscosity, create the fluid, cell forming organic patterns in resin that have defined fluid resin art as a visual category. The alcohol solvent carrier evaporates rapidly, which is why a drop of alcohol ink placed on a wet resin surface spreads and then stops, leaving a defined edge rather than continuing to spread. The Ranger brand specifically is the most widely used in the resin art community because of its consistent pigment concentration and broad color range. Cost $4 to $6 per bottle. Never add more than a few drops per pour. Alcohol content above approximately 3% of pore volume can affect the resin's cure chemistry. Number 13, UV stable epoxy resin. Art resin or countertop epoxy with UV inhibitor. The specific resin formulation used for any project intended for display in natural light matters significantly. Standard casting epoxy without UV stabilizers yellows progressively when exposed to sunlight and UV-containing artificial light, typically beginning within 3 to 6 months of exposure. UV-stable resins, specifically art resin, which markets itself specifically on its UV and HALS, hindered amine light stabilizer, or any epoxy with UV inhibitor in the formulation, maintain clarity significantly longer. For any artwork or functional product that will be displayed in a lighted environment, the material cost difference between standard and UV-stable resin is justified by the extended lifespan of the finished piece's clarity. Number 14, Release Agent Spray, Ease Release 200. Man Ease Release 200, a professional-grade mold release spray used in production casting, is applied to plastic, acrylic, and 3D printed molds before pouring to prevent epoxy from chemically bonding to the mold surface during cure. Silicone molds release epoxy naturally without spray. Non-silicone molds require release agent to demold cleanly without damaging the cured piece or the mold. Cost $12 to $18. A thin, even application, 1 to 2 light sprays allowed to dry for 2 minutes before pouring is sufficient. Over-application leaves a film on the resin surface that must be sanded away. Number 15, Keychain Hardware, Split rings, lobster claws, and chains for the link and cord. Keychain hardware is one of the first finishing supplies a beginner resin artist needs because keychains are consistently the most accessible first sellable product, fast to make, inexpensive in materials, and in constant demand as gifts and personal accessories. A complete starter pack of keychain hardware includes split key rings in 25mm and 20mm sizes, small lobster claw clasps to attach to a ring, short-length chains, and jump rings to link components. Cost $6 to $12 for a mixed assortment pack from jewelry supply companies like Beadsmith or from craft supply platforms. The split ring is specifically more durable than a simple jump ring at the key attachment point because it holds through a double-wrapped metal loop. Number 16, Polishing Compound, Novus Plastic Polish Set. The Novus 3-step plastic polish kit, a coarse compound, Novus 2, and a fine compound, Novus 1, with the scratch remover, Novus 3, for deeper scratches, is the polishing system most widely recommended in the resin art community for producing the final glass clear surface after wet sanding. Applied with a soft cloth or a buffing wheel on a low-speed rotary tool, Novus 2 removes fine sanding scratches, and Novus 1 produces the final high-gloss clarity. Cost $15 to $22 for the set. This is the step that converts a sanded surface that looks hazy into one that looks like glass, and it's the specific step that many beginners skip, producing pieces that look good but not professional. Number 17, Respirator, NIOSH-approved organic vapor cartridges. A NIOSH-approved respirator with organic vapor cartridges is the correct respiratory protection for mixing and pouring epoxy resin. Standard dust masks, N95, and surgical masks do not filter the chemical vapors that epoxy resin and its hardener release during mixing and early cure. They filter particulate matter only. Epoxy vapors can cause respiratory sensitization with repeated exposure, which in some cases leads to an allergy that prevents further resin use permanently. The 3M 6200 half-face respirator with 6001 organic vapor cartridges is the standard recommendation in occupational health guidance for epoxy use. Cost $25 to $35 for the respirator. Cartridges require replacement when you can begin to smell fumes through the mask. Number 18, nitrile gloves, thick 8mm chemical resistant. Standard 5mm or lighter nitrile gloves are insufficient for epoxy resin work. Epoxy's chemical components permeate through thin gloves within minutes of skin contact. Chemical-resistant 8mm or heavier nitrile gloves available from industrial supply companies or some online craft suppliers provide adequate barrier protection for typical resin mixing and pouring sessions. Cost $12 to $20 for a box of 50. Skin sensitivation from repeated epoxy contact is a genuine occupational health risk. It can develop after years of apparently problem-free exposure and in severe cases prevents any further epoxy resin contact permanently. Proper gloves are the most important safety tool on this list. Number 19, electric drill kit with small bit set for resin drilling. A small electric drill, either a corded rotary tool like the Dremel 3000 or a compact cordless drill with a set of small drill bits in 1mm, 1.5mm, 2mm, and 3mm diameters, is essential for adding attachment holes to cured resin pieces. Keychains need a hole for the split ring. Pendants need a hole for the bail or eye screw. Earrings need a hole for the earring wire. Without a drill, the only option is to embed a jump ring into the wet resin before cure, which requires precise pre-placement and often shifts during the pour. Wire cutters and needle nose pliers are the two hand tools that every beginner resin jewelry maker needs for opening and closing jump rings, attaching earring wires, cutting chain to length, and fitting eye screws. The jump ring technique specifically requires two pairs of pliers, one to hold each side of the ring, twisting the ring open laterally, sideways, not pulling the gap wider, to preserve the ring's circular shape. Pulling a jump ring's gap wider rather than twisting it sideways permanently deforms the ring and prevents it from closing securely, which is the single most common beginner jewelry assembly mistake that results in pieces falling apart. Wire cutters and needle nose pliers are the two hand tools that every beginner resin jewelry maker needs for opening and closing jump rings, attaching earring wires, cutting chain to length, and fitting eye screws. The jump ring technique specifically requires two pairs of pliers, one to hold each side of the ring, twisting the ring open laterally, sideways, not pulling the gap wider, to preserve the ring's circular shape. Pulling a jump ring's gap wider rather than twisting it sideways permanently deforms the ring and prevents it from closing securely, which is the single most common beginner jewelry assembly mistake that results in pieces falling apart. Stackable wire cooling and drying rack, the type used for baking with multiple tiers that slot together vertically, is one of the most practical workspace tools for a beginner resin artist specifically because it solves the flat surface problem. Freshly poured resin molds need to sit undisturbed on a perfectly level surface during the cure cycle, and most workspaces have only limited flat, level surface area. A 2 or 3 tier stackable wire rack multiplies the available curing surface vertically without requiring additional floor or bench space. Cost $12 to $22 for a stackable 3-tier rack from kitchen supply stores. The wire grid also organizes workflow visually. Pieces waiting for sanding, polishing, and hardware assembly each occupy a separate tier. Long curved stainless steel tweezers, 20 to 25 centimeters total length with a curved tip, allow precise placement of inclusions, pressed flowers, foil pieces, glitter arrangements, small charms, into a resin pour after the pour is in the mold without the maker's hand contacting the resin surface. The curved tip specifically allows inclusions to be placed at depth within the mold, reaching down into a pour rather than just touching the surface with fine positional control. Cost $6 to $12 for a quality pair. Stainless steel is the correct material, resin releases from it cleanly, and the tweezers can be wiped clean between uses without degradation. Keychain and phone grip blanks are the pre-made hardware forms that beginners fill with resin rather than building the entire piece from scratch. A keychain blank is a metal frame with a clear resin fillable window. The maker pours resin directly into the frame, cures it, and the keychain hardware is already attached. A phone grip base is a round adhesive platform fitted to the back of a phone case onto which a domed resin piece is glued. Both formats require less skill than making a fully independent resin piece because the hardware structure is provided. The maker's contribution is purely the resin design inside. Earring hooks, studs, and posts are the metal components that convert a resin shape into a wearable earring, and beginners commonly underestimate how many of these they will go through. A jump ring is a small circular metal ring with a gap in it that opens with 2 pairs of pliers, connects pendant to chain or earring to hook, and closes back securely. Eye screws, also called bail pins or screw eyes, are small metal screws with a circular loop on top that are twisted directly into the top edge of a cured resin piece to create the attachment point for a jump ring or chain. Silicone molds, the ready-to-use version rather than a mold-making kit, are the first thing a beginner resin artist actually needs, and they're often underspecified in tool lists that jump straight to advanced techniques. A beginner assortment typically includes coaster rounds, small earring shapes, keychains, and pendant ovals, covering the 4 most common entry-level resin products in one purchase. Silicone is the correct mold material because cured epoxy resin releases from it cleanly with any mold release agent. Cost $8 to $20 for a multi-shape starter set from resin craft suppliers. The quality variable to check before purchasing is the shore hardness of the silicone. Standard wet-dry sandpaper, the black silicon carbide type available at any hardware store in grits from 400 through 20,000, used wet, is the beginner-accessible sanding system for resin finishing before polishing compound is applied. The water lubricates the sanding action, prevents the sandpaper from clogging with resin dust, and reduces the heat generated by friction that can cause micro-cracking in the resin surface. Cost $5 to $10 for a multi-pack covering 400, 800, 1000, 1500, and 2000 grit. Sand in one direction per grit level, then rotate 90 degrees for the next one. This crosshatch approach reveals remaining scratches as lines running differently from the previous grit. Number 27. Microfiber cloths for final polishing and cleaning. Soft microfiber cloths, the type used for eyeglasses and camera lenses, are the correct final polishing surface for resin after polishing compound has been applied. Standard paper towels and cotton rags leave fine scratches in the resin polished surface because their fibers are coarser than the resin's polished finish requires. A microfiber cloth buffs the polishing compound to a glass-clear result without introducing new micro scratches that would dull the final surface. Cost $5 to $10 for a pack of 10. Keep one cloth for mold prep and a separate set for final polishing to prevent cross-contamination between the two uses. Number 28. Spray bottle, isopropyl alcohol, 91%. A fine mist spray bottle filled with 91% isopropyl alcohol is used for 2 resin-specific purposes: removing surface bubbles from small UV resin pores. The alcohol briefly lowers surface tension, allowing bubbles to pop cleanly, and cleaning resin from tools, tweezers, and work surfaces before it cures. The 91% concentration is specifically required. 70% isopropyl alcohol contains too much water to be effective for resin surface work, and the water content can affect the cure of any resin it contacts. Cost $2 to $4 for a small spray bottle, one of the most inexpensive tools on this list and one of the most frequently used across every resin session. Number 38. Orbital Rotary Tumbler for even resin cure on small pieces. A small motorized orbital tumbler, the type used by rock collectors to polish stones, adapted for resin use, rotates small molds continuously during the cure cycle, preventing inclusions from settling to the base of the mold through gravity and achieving a more even distribution of suspended elements throughout the cured piece. This is specifically useful for pours with multiple suspended elements, glitter, small botanical pieces, microcrystals, where gravity settlement during a stationary cure would cause all elements to collect at the base. Cost $30 to $60 for an entry-level rotary tumbler. Number 30. Clear UV Resin Starter Bottle for beginners. Clear UV resin, a one-part resin that requires no mixing ratio calculation and cures on demand under a UV lamp rather than through a timed chemical reaction, is the most beginner-friendly resin format and the specific type most educators recommend for a first resin project. Unlike two-part epoxy, UV resin eliminates the off-ratio mixing problem that is the most common cause of permanently uncured sticky resin in beginner work. You open the bottle, apply the resin, cure under a UV lamp, done. Popular beginner-accessible UV resin brands include Padico, Limino, and Let's Resin, all available from craft suppliers. Cost $10 to $18 for a 25 to 50 milliliter starter bottle. Number 31. Deburring Tool and Nail File for smooth resin edges. A deburring tool, a small handheld tool with a rotating carbide blade tip that removes sharp burrs and rough edges from drilled holes and cut edges in cured resin, is one of the finishing tools that beginners discover they need the first time they try to thread a jump ring through a freshly drilled resin hole. Drilled resin holes almost always have a raised burr on the exit side and a slightly rough edge on the entry side, both of which catch on jump ring wire and prevent smooth threading. One pass of the deburring tool around the hole interior removes the burr cleanly in seconds. Number 32. Sanding block or foam pad for hand sanding control. A sanding block, a small rubber or foam-backed block that wraps sandpaper around a flat, firm surface for hand sanding resin edges and surfaces, produces more consistent, controlled sanding results than holding sandpaper with bare fingers. When sandpaper is held in bare fingers, the pressure concentrates at the fingertip contact points and creates uneven sanding marks, visible as waves or dips in the resin surface when held at an angle to the light. A sanding block distributes pressure evenly across the full width of the paper. Wet sanding with a foam pad using a bowl of clean water produces the cleanest resin finish accessible to a complete beginner. Number 33. Airless applicator syringe, measured resin dispensing. A precision syringe with a measured barrel available in 5, 10, and 20 milliliter sizes allows exact measured volumes of resin components to be drawn up and dispensed rather than poured from a bottle, which gives air-free, accurate volume measurement for small batches. This is specifically valuable for UV resin applications where small, precise amounts are needed for individual jewelry pieces. Drawing up 1 milliliter exactly is far more accurate than attempting to pour 1 milliliter from a bottle into a cup. Cost $6 to $12 for a set. The syringe method also prevents air entrainment during dispensing, reducing the bubble load before even beginning to mix. Number 35. Toothpicks and wooden craft sticks, beginner mixing and detail. Toothpicks and flat wooden craft sticks are two of the most genuinely useful beginner resin tools precisely because they cost almost nothing and perform several essential functions that no specialist tool handles better for a new maker. Wooden craft sticks, the wide, flat paddle pop stick type, are used for the initial mixing of two-part epoxy in a graduated cup. The flat edge scrapes the sides and bottom of the cup to incorporate unmixed resin that a round rod misses, and that thorough scraping is precisely what prevents sticky, unmixed streaks in finished pieces. The flat edge of a craft stick scrapes the sides and bottom of a mixing cup to incorporate unmixed resin that a round rod consistently misses. Number 35. jump rings, and eye screws or bail pins for pendants and earrings. Jump rings and eye screws are the two hardware pieces that convert a flat resin cured shape into a wearable jewelry piece, and beginners frequently underestimate how many of these they will go through. A jump ring is a small circular metal ring with a gap in it that opens with two pairs of pliers, connects pendant to chain or earring to hook, and closes back securely. Eye screws, also called bail pins or screw eyes, are small metal screws with a circular loop on top that are twisted directly into the top edge of a cured resin piece to create the attachment point for a jump ring or chain.